if this is our true self, and this is the version of ourselves we've become in order to feel worthy, to feel in control, to feel safe, the distance between your true and your adapted self is what causes illness. That's what causes imbalance. And the closer we can come back to our truth, the more likely we are going to then step into the fullness, not just of our potential and our truth of who we are and why we're here and what we have to give, but we'll have the capacity to do that, because in that place, we plug back into life force. We plug back into our knowing. We plug back into masculine, feminine energy in a balanced and healthy way.
The Fatigue to Flow podcast offers a deep, transformative approach to healing burnout and chronic fatigue. Going beyond surface level fixes like stress management or supplements, we explore the real roots, nervous system imbalance, harmful psychological patterns, and the mind-body connection. Chronic fatigue isn't just a condition. It's an opportunity for awakening to your greatest self. Each episode blends personal experience with practical tools. If you're ready for lasting vitality, joy, and flow, this episode is for you.
Hi, everyone. Today, I am here with Tamacin, or Tam, and we're going to be talking about something very close to our hearts, which is the support of women who hold everything for everyone else. They are over-giving, over-functioning, overwhelmed, and generally just pretty exhausted and even possibly burnt out. But these are often also women who have such a sense of what they could be doing in the world. They're seeking a deeper meaning. They wish to be change makers. They have a soul's calling, but they just can't get there because they're too caught up in the holding of everything, holding it all together, holding it for everyone else. And so we love to hold spaces for these women. We love to support them. And we do that because of our own journeys of having been women who hold too much. So today I've asked Tam to join me so we can share our own experiences and journeys and what we've learned from them, and also how we can support you if you would ever feel called to do that. And before I hand you over to Tam to introduce herself, so in case you don't know me, I'm a holistic psychologist. I'm also a body talk practitioner, so that's working with muscle testing to look at body and mind connection. And I also bring in trauma and somatic work, which is working with the body, and a bit of tantric work as well with masculine, feminine energy. So you'll hear from Tam as well. Both of us have got a background in mental health, but we both figured out very early on that it's not all about the mind. And in fact, this makes sense because 80% of the messaging is from the gut to the brain and 20% is from the brain to the gut. So it's not all in the head. And beyond the body and the mind is also the spiritual aspect, which is so very important. And this is not about religion. So when we talk about spirituality, we are talking about your sense of yourself in how you belong in the world, what your role is, what your soul's calling is, why you're here, and really being able to fulfill that and fulfill the potential of that. And so we'll be sharing a lot around body, mind, and spirit connection. I'm going to hand over to Tam to introduce herself and to maybe share a little bit about Tam sharing your experience around overwhelm, burnout, etc.
Hello, ladies. I'm Tamacin. I am a family intervention specialist, so I look at kind of families that are going through struggles, and we look at what we need to implement to help the family process what they're going through. I have a background in clinical psychology and early childhood intervention. I started off very much focused on the body and then moved to study the mind. And the last 10 years have been really studying the essence of who we are and how that plays out in the world. Like Kerry, I'm very passionate about helping moms, especially moms and women. Doesn't necessarily have to be moms, but women in the world today where it's so hard and so fast, and there's almost hasn't been a space for us to soften. And I think we're really starting to see the effects of the fact that we don't have these soft spaces. and that there's this call for us as women, and we're seeing it collectively, how these pockets are starting to arise where women are starting to soften and hold space for each other and hold space for ourselves. My burnout journey starts with I was a go-getter. I was traveling. I was independent. It was all me and my fast, hard, masculine energy. And when I was 40, I bumped into my husband today. And all of a sudden, within moments of being this very independent, strong, self-sufficient woman, here I was engaged, I was getting married, there was a baby on the way, there was some tension in certain family situations, we relocated, my father was dying of cancer, so I found myself heavily pregnant in a space completely alone. And in true Tam style, I was like, I've got this. I can do this. I can hold a dying father. I can hold a family who's falling apart because the father's dying. I can hold the issues in this new marriage. I can do this. And the little baby came out and my father rapidly declined and I hit severe postpartum depression. And even in that moment again, I believed that I could do all of this on my own. I didn't need help. And my son must have been about a year old, and I took him to a doctor, and the doctor sat me down and said, I know you've got all the tools, but you cannot do this on your own. You need support. And that is when I realized that he was actually right, that I was drowning. I wasn't rocking up as a mother. I wasn't rocking up as a new wife. I wasn't rocking up anywhere. And right in the beginning, when I'd considered having a little one, I joined a container with a fantastic woman who was all about our cycles and how important it was to live by our cycles. And this has always been something that had sat with me and I'd kind of tried to do, but I really wanted to invest in this to become a new mom. And I'd completely forgotten about it. And when I was in the darkest hole, I started to just pull out what I innately knew was important and that I had already available to me. And I started to just look and started to just put these things in. I mean, the very first was my cycle of menstruation and my winter was that it was okay to slow down. It was okay to not push myself at that time of my cycle. It was okay to receive nourishment. And that was my first step. And I think that's why we've started with winter, because often it's in our winter where we really sit back and look and go, wow, something really needs to shift here. I'm struggling. And here we are today, ready to hold our containers for women on the other side of our personal journeys.
Oh, I love that. Thanks for sharing that. I think it's so true that our journey starts when we often hit what we think is rock bottom, but it's actually just the darkest phase where everything has to fall apart and we have to sit in that void for a while so that we can remember who we are and remember what our truth is and come back to that. So my journey is similar in some ways. I was also always very, very dominant masculine in my energy. I always had to be the best at everything. I had to be perfect. I had to be as good as the boys in my class from when I was at school. Physically, I needed to keep up with them. Academically, I needed to be better than everyone else. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was actually ridiculous that the expectations I placed on myself. And I say that with deep compassion for myself now. So I started burning out early in my life. I remember even being exhausted as a teenager when others around me just didn't seem to battle as much as I did. And it started to show up more in my 20s and then very much through my studies, my masters, my honors and my masters. And then I worked in the prison system, and that was like hitting my head against a brick wall because I had such a deep sense of what I could do there, but I was working against a system that all they wanted to do was to pull down the offenders that we'd been put in place to build up so that they wouldn't reoffend. So I had to get out of that system. And then I felt pregnant, and I felt pregnant, and I had in my head, I had such a sense of the feminine. Okay, let's put it this way. I had been introduced to the feminine about 3 or 4 years earlier. And I was like, oh, this is the missing piece. And so I had gone all in, and I was going to be this earth mother, practicing attachments, parenting. But no one had told me that you have to have the nervous system capacity to do that, right? Like, no one tells you that. And so I had this, of course I burnt out. And we have this, he was the founder of the Body Talk system. He always called a spade a spade. And he held a class where we could all have sessions from him. And I was describing my birth trauma, which I'd had with my first daughter. And he said to me something like, yeah, well, of course you couldn't have had, what were you thinking? Home births are for farm wives, not for uptight women like you. And he nailed it. He was 100% correct. So I had an idea of what I wanted to be, but my nervous system was nowhere near that. I was still very much stuck in the dominant masculine energy. And following the birth of my first child, I completely crashed. Absolutely. And was diagnosed with adrenal fatigue syndrome. And like you, Tam, I also went back to those cycles at that point, because what happened was, so I had become aware of cycles because I had been using the Mirena as birth control, and I'd been in the UK, and it was time that it needed to be changed out. They have to be changed out every 5 years. And the appointment that had been set for me, I somehow got it wrong. And I really wanted to get it done in the UK because they actually do it for free, the NHS. And in South Africa, it was like over 5,000 Rand back then. And I missed the appointment. I went the wrong day. And I was so gutted. I was like, why did I do this? How could I be so silly? And I had this knowing, you're not supposed to be on any birth control. This is not that your body doesn't want this. And I then was like, but what do I do then? Because if I don't use any birth control, how am I going to prevent myself from falling pregnant? And I just started to look into it, and I discovered how to work with your cycle, and how to work with signs from your body, like your basal temperature, your resting body temperature in the mornings, and your cervical fluid. And this was like the first time that I started to really come into my body and have a relationship with my body to feel empowered, as opposed to push my body and leave my body to feel empowered. And I then used the same system to actually fall pregnant. And it was only quite far into my actual adrenal fatigue, or my burnout, that I remembered these, because my colleague who I'd been sharing an office with, because I slowly started to get back into working again, minimal hours, she had this beautiful chart on the wall that had all these there were 4 different colors, and she marked like different blocks of color. And I realized there was a calendar, and I said to her, what is this? And she said, these are lunar phases, and your body is impacted by different lunar phases all the time. And then I was like, oh, wow, hold on. Okay, so I've got my menstrual cycles happening here. There's these lunar phases. And then, of course, in true fashion, things started to just come into my life. Then as Kate Northrup started to talk about cycles, there was a woman who was talking about how each menstrual phase has a different quality energy, and we're supported in different things in those phases. And that was the first time I realized, oh, I'm not supposed to be able to be on 24/7, 365. There are times I'm supposed to be recuperating and resting. It sounds logical, right? But I hadn't got that. And so that was a huge part of my journey too, always coming back to the understanding of the phases and realizing how important they are to our health. Yeah.
What we look at is the reality is that these phases and these cycles have always been there. And I even remember being a lot younger, always being a little bit different to the family, always being a little bit more that way, and everyone's a little bit more this way. And I remember seeing it when I was a lot younger, and seeing these things, and there was this resonance in my body. I was like, yes. And then there was like, no, this is too weird. This is too out there. Like if I want to live like this, people are going to think I'm a whack job. it's only later in life where you look back and you go, no, this is not an out there concept. This is actually how our systems work and how everything within ourselves and nature and the world around us is constantly moving in this rhythm together. And this version of we're stuck is when we start to push against this natural flow.
Yeah, that's so important. Is one, when we start having these symptoms, instead of it being a terrible thing, which I of course was so cross with my body. I was so cross it wasn't functioning the way I wanted it to. And then having already become a body talk practitioner, I said, hold on, Kerry, you know your body's just communicating. What is it telling you? And that was when I started to then go down the path of, oh, wow, I don't really feel very safe. I actually haven't felt truly safe for as long as I can remember. I have always been hypervigilant, had to control everything. And then I learned about what that's been doing to my nervous system. So I was like, oh, this is an opportunity. Thank you, body, for giving me this information. And then the second part of that, what you're saying, of course, is I always like to say, if this is our true self, and this is the version of ourselves we've become, in order to feel worthy, to feel in control, to feel safe, the distance between your true and your adapted self is what causes illness. That's what causes imbalance. And the closer we can come back to our truth, the more likely we are going to then step into the fullness, not just of our potential and our what we can, like discovering our truth of who we are and why we're here and what we have to give, but we'll have the capacity to do that, because in that place, we plug back into life force. We plug back into our knowing. We plug back into masculine, feminine energy in a balanced and healthy way. Yeah.
I think that is 100% correct, is to find the dance between our masculine and our feminine energy, and to really understand those concepts, because I think sometimes we don't truly grasp the concept. And, we sometimes perceive masculine to be like, oh, I must be a man, I must be aggressive, I must be this. And it's like, no, we all have both of these within us. And they, again, also dance. But as females today, there is a call for us to lead a little bit more from our softness, from our feminine. It doesn't put masculine away. It just allows the woman to lead. And I think you and I have chatted about this, and you've used the metaphor so beautifully so often, is like the masculine is the riverbank and the feminine is the river, and how the masculine is able to just hold the feminine flow and allow the river to move as it's supposed to.
Yes, absolutely. I was taught that by my mentor, Juliet Gaia, and it's made such a difference to me to start bringing in, because I went from distorted masculine to all feminine, and then I realized, hold on, they both need to be there. We need to have both of them. And it's in that place that the magic starts to happen. And then there was something you just said now, that it is so much now time for us to step into this feminine way of leading. All the old systems are falling away. The health industry field is changing. People are starting to realize that they're actually the experts on their bodies, and that doctors are, yes, they're educated, and often they will have an idea. We're the experts. And a lot of it is also focused on profit, pharmaceutical products. It doesn't look at the whole body as a whole, a system, which is a feminine quality, to look at everything as a whole. Unfortunately, doctors have been trained to look at bodies as different parts, but these parts all work together. So look, I'm certainly not saying there's not a place for medicine, especially in terms of trauma, but with chronic illness. More and more I'm seeing with the women that I'm supporting, the medical field just doesn't provide them with answers anymore. And so these more distorted masculine models are not working. People are becoming unhappy. They're feeling dissatisfied. There's a feeling there's got to be more, but no one knows yet what it is. And that is where this more feminine guidance is going to be so important. And it's not just women leading the way. It is also men getting in touch with their femininity too, or all beings getting in touch with their femininity and balancing it with their masculinity. So this time is so potent for this work.
I think you've really hit the nail on the head there, Kerry, is that we're starting to feel disillusioned with what is available. We are starting to kind of, I think there's this analysis paralysis that we're all going into. I mean, I look at myself who's very learned in a lot of these spheres, and I pride myself on the fact that I do understand a lot of this and I grasp it. And the next minute I was this mom and I was traumatized and I was a deer in the headlights, and I was now grasping for this information, and there's just so much information out there. And then it's all different, and one's telling you this and someone's telling you that, and you don't know what you're doing, and you're panicking, and you stop trusting yourself, and you just start rocking up in this fear-based, almost like wall. And I think it's so important, and I think both you and I feel it's not actually about us even telling people what they need to do and fixing it for them. It's about stewardship and guidance and walking a journey with everyone and saying, you know, we've walked this journey. We're a little ahead. So we're just going to guide you along, but you are your own guru. You know innately what you need, but unfortunately, we're taught to not trust ourselves. We're taught to trust the outside. Silence and rest is an absolute taboo. You're lazy, you're unproductive, you're not doing. So we're all moving so fast that we're missing our body cues. We're missing our emotional cues. And then when we do get knocked hard with these cues, because these cues come gently until they knock you, then we're rushing off to someone else to fix it because I don't know how to fix this. I don't know what I'm doing. And it's all about just coming back to stillness for a moment, to just pause and breathe and listen. And then you can get going. No one's telling you have to stop and lie in bed for 6 months. That happens when you hit chronic burnout. But it's when the signs to come is to actually say, I can stop for a moment. Because I think often, especially women, we think that if we stop, everything's going to fall apart. Nothing can be handled if I'm not on top of my stuff. But the reality is that when we do slow down and we do start to turn inwards and nurture, we actually become far more valuable. We become far more energetic. We become far more available. And I see this so often in my practice with parents where they're like, I just can't get out of the spin. And I'm like, the only way you get out is if you stop. And they go, who's got time to stop? I can't stop. I've only got 24 hours in a day. I don't have time to stop. And I'm like, if you can stop for 20 minutes in your day, we actually land up having more time. It's the craziest concept. And it's something that we've really struggled to grasp because it's like, I'm drowning in a 24-hour day. And now you want me to add that half an hour on that I actually am not getting through everything. And it's crazy how when you actually do take that 20 minutes or 10 minutes, because no one can start with taking 5 hours in a day for themselves. But if you are really conscious about taking that 15-minute stop, you recharge, and all of a sudden, what normally takes you 3 hours to get out through because you're so burnt out and tired, all of a sudden takes you 90 minutes. Now you've got that extra 90 minutes that you were burning before. Now you've got that. So now you do something else. And that is how your day lands up being longer. Is that because of the capacity that you have, because your capacity is now higher, you can do more, whereas before you couldn't. You were actually clawing through your day. On autopilot often.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. There's actually Parkinson's law states something like your work will expand, or what you do will expand to the time you have for it. So if you're exhausted and procrastinating and not exactly in flow, you can do the work for 20 minutes. If you take, let's say a project would take you 20 hours, and then that same amount of work, if you took the time out to rest, so the feminine is the listening to your intuition. It's plugging into vital force and energy, It is creative energy. So imagine you plugging into all of that now, and you're bringing in the masculine, which gives guidance and direction, and it brings clarity. So you've got all of that now. You can then do that same amount of work in 10 hours versus 20, and it's going to flow, and you're going to be nourished while you're doing it. It's a totally different way of showing up and functioning. It's really blown my mind, this whole thing. And you said something, Tam, earlier about we're a little step ahead. I just want to say that both of us are also very aware that we're still walking the path.
100%.
We may be a bit ahead in some respects, but we're also constantly learning. And it's such a journey to walk with others, because we learn through the work we do. I'm sure you find that as well. So on that note, let's talk about what we put together. Do you want to start with that?
So just as you can see with all the work and interactions that Kerry and I have been having, we decided that we really wanted to support people, and we really wanted to share this knowledge that we've gained as we've worked with people and where we're at. And I think it's so important that we start creating more communities with women, with men, with families. Like, all these pockets of communities have to start being created. And we kind of chatted and decided that we would like to start, we've been to, I think Kerry and I have both been to retreats, we've both been on workshops, and they're beautiful and they're impactful, and you take away these things and this knowledge, and sometimes you can put a snippet into life, and sometimes you look up 2 weeks later and you're like, oh, I feel worse than I did before I did the course, or I went on the retreat. I thought this was going to shift. I thought it would change. So Kerry and I started to chat, and we thought, okay, but how do we make this investment into self-sustainable? How do we take it one step further from a moment to a lifetime and a sustainability? So we sat and we chatted, and we decided that what we would like to do is we would like to make this a whole process and a journey. So, and because we love to work with cycles and those kind of things, we said, well, let's look at breaking up this journey, because it sometimes overwhelms. You can't take too much in. So let's break this journey up into, let's start on a wider frame, and let's start with our seasons. Let's look at winter, let's look at summer, let's look at autumn, and let's look at spring. And from there, we can then start to put the information and the tool sets that we have and the support that we have, and we can start laying them out in these different seasons. And we thought, well, South Africa, it's fitting. We're going into winter. We've spoken how sometimes, or most of the time, we all only start to shift when we're hitting winter parts, or when these, and we need the support. So we thought it would be a beautiful time to start this journey in winter, and to start with the tools of let's stop, let's breathe, let's check in, let's look at our nervous system, let's look at the very bottom foundation, because if we don't have a bottom foundation, no matter what we put on top, it's going to, like quicksand, it's just going to keep falling through. So we've decided to start in winter with our retreat, and that's what we're looking at. Let's start just laying the foundations, and let's start nurturing. And then we thought that, well, to really make this impactful and to see how we've all been able to support each other, let's extend it. Let's not only just support for a weekend. Let's hold a space for the whole of winter. And that way, it holds us accountable. It holds the people that come with us accountable. And it just makes it a little bit more sustainable, because I know personally, I tried to walk this journey alone, and I stumbled too many times. And it was only when I saw the hands come out, and the hugs and the conversations and the support, was that I really felt nourished enough to be able to actually sustain this new path that I'm walking.
Yeah, thanks so much for introducing that. And there's two things I want to come back to what you just said there, is when we try and bring change, most of us try and do it ourselves, especially because most of the women we work with who are like Tam and I are exceptionally self-reliant. They're very good at doing things on their own. But that doesn't mean that you have to do it on your own. And also, when you're doing it on your own, you're doing it from a nervous system that's generally not very regulated. When we don't have a regulated nervous system, the change doesn't stick. That's what I was saying. I didn't have the capacity to parent as this earthy attachment parenting parents because I didn't have the nervous system that had the capacity to do that could hold that. So we focused in this retreat on helping to we'll be looking at neuroscience and nervous system regulation to create the nervous system foundations, and then also the foundational practices, so body practices, somatic practices, meditations, and other tools that we share about cyclical living, how to track your cycles. We'll bring all of that together with that foundation of the nervous system support so that it is sustainable. And then, of course, what you're saying also about working with others is that we co-regulate each other. We're born deeply connected to the mother, and ideally that regulation should continue into childhood and then into adulthood. But when we have had a dysfunctional relationship from early on, we don't allow ourselves even to actually be co-regulated. But it's how we're made. We're built to be co-regulated. So the retreat is about co-regulation and then holding a 3-month space after that, or support, post-retreat support, to continue coming back into the space to be co-regulated beyond just the retreat. Anything else?
Yeah, I think that's it's so important, the co-regulation. I was actually thinking about that earlier, and how today, I think so many of us are running around with these dysregulated nervous system, and we're living in a far more conscious world today. Like moms are really wanting to kind of, some of our moms were at home, some of our moms were working, and we really wanted to be this generation of really, available, nurturing, loving, caring moms, because we've got this information and we've got everything around us. But the reality is that I think we're walking around far more dysregulated than our parents were. So now all of a sudden, a lot of us women are sitting in these deep spaces of guilt and shame because, like you said, I want to be this earthy mom. I want to be the crunchy mama. I want to do this. I want to make the fruit juices. I want to bake the apples. And I mean, bless us, a lot of us start doing it, and it's amazing. And the next minute we realize, this is just too much. And then we start to buy the fruit pouch or the ready cut up fruit or the something like that. And then we're doing what we can to survive. But in the same quiet moments, we're crying or we're beating ourselves up because we're not doing it how we wanted to. We're not doing it how we're supposed to. We're not being able to be the moms or the friends or the nurturers or the teachers or the guiders that we want to be, because we just don't have capacity within ourselves.
Yes. I tried all the cloth nappies. Did you try cloth nappies?
Yeah, for about 2 weeks.
I pushed through for longer than that, and I don't know what I was thinking. Oh my word. These are bamboo cloth nappies. I was going to do it. Yes, it is so true. Yeah. There's nothing worse than having a sense of what you can be and then falling short over and over again. And that's going to bed at night and just feeling that you've once again not measured up to this idea in your head. And we both know that it is possible. It's possible to measure up, but also to hold a different space for yourself when you don't, because that's okay too. 100%. That's a lot about what we're going to be sharing. Yeah. Yes, so I think it's also very important. I think, we've also had the discussion around how, and I'm seeing in spaces, and that is also to just look back at our lineage and our heritage and look at the tools that are available to us. A lot of us are looking at Eastern philosophies and all these different philosophies, we're trying to bring in because we're feeling like where we're at is not serving. But it's also to be able to sit with women in conversations, in community,
of our own cultures, of our own backgrounds, of all these different spaces, and start to draw knowledge, because sometimes just checking into who we are in our own space and our own lineage, there again are tools that we haven't seen that are readily available to us and can really work for us. Not everyone has the time to be umming all morning, and not everyone has time to have these things. But when we're starting to connect to ourselves and our lineages through different things, they bring this joy, they bring vitality, they bring all these things. And I think that's another thing that we want to look at, is just what tools and things do you actually have available at the moment that you're not 100% aware of. And that's also something we want to bring, is to just help the ladies who come and join us, is to look at what you actually have, because we often looking at what I don't have. Oh, I don't have this, I don't have that, I don't have this. And we forget that over there we do have something that actually could be really beneficial.
Yes. So come and join us, just to remember how incredibly powerful you actually are, and what is possible when we come together as women. It's really quite mind-blowing and such a privilege to watch and be part of. So I'll post the link. Both of us will share this separately, and we'll share the link for the retreat if you want to go and have a look and learn more about it. And please contact us if you want any information at all. And if you don't join us, and this has just touched something in you and awakened something in you, then that's amazing. That's awesome. That's what we want to do as well, is because just by stepping more fully into your truth and shining your light, you will touch someone else, and they will touch someone else, and they'll touch someone else. So it's not about doing anything. It's just about coming back to the truth of who you are. Right?
100%.
All right. Thanks so much for the conversation. And
thank you, Kerry.
Yeah. We'll meet again soon. Okay.